So this one is probably more geared towards you.
Oh, God.
White Americans are afraid of black people. Всем привет, меня зовут Ань, и как всегда, если вы тут впервые на канале, то добро пожаловать на канал. Я американский полиглот, который выучил русский язык и теперь снимает видео на русском языке на различные темы, связанные с Америкой, с культурой, с языками и так далее. И сегодня мы реагируем на русские стереотипы об американцах. Итак, для этого видео я позвал своего друга Трипа.
What's up?
Он раньше снялся со мной в другом видосе, и он вам так сильно понравился, что я решил его позвать опять для этого видео. И сегодня я хотел сделать более интерактивное видео. Итак, я сделал пост на моей странице ВКонтакте и на YouTube, где я просил, чтобы вы мне прислали ваши стереотипы и убеждения про американцев, и сегодня мы их берем и мы на них отреагируем. Тут у меня на телефоне есть несколько скриншотов ваших комментариев с разными стереотипами и убеждениями об американцах, и мы просто их обсудим и посмотрим, насколько они правдивы. Итак, без лишних слов, давайте начнем. Итак, ребята, теперь начинаем. Но в отличие от меня, Трип, к сожалению, не знает русского, и поэтому с этого момента мы будем говорить только на английском, но, конечно, здесь будут субтитры, и поэтому вы должны все понимать. Alright, so from now on, everything's going to be in English. You'll understand everything.
Let's go.
So what I said at the beginning of this video, today we're going to be reacting to Russian stereotypes about the United States. And so I asked my subscribers to actually send in some of their stereotypes, and we're just going to take a look at couple interesting ones, and we'll see how true or false or whatever they are.
All right, let's get into it.
Yeah. So the first stereotype that I have is that Americans believe everything that they see on the news.
Ooh. This is actually like slightly I guess hard for me / easy for me to say, because I am somebody that I am very like anti-news personally, right? Mm-hmm. So when I see things on the news, I always like, again, we've been talking about it a lot more lately. There's been things going on. I'm not going to go into any detail on that. But just talking about what you see on the news, how there's always two sides of it. Just if you're reading from this particular source, it's going to have this kind of bias to it. That source has this bias to it. So nobody's going to give you a clear picture. But I have friends, I have family that they have their designated news source. No matter what that news source says, it's the truth. It feels like 60 to 70% of people, a good majority of people, that they will listen to whatever's on the news, actually. So
yeah, and honestly, I think there's some truth to that. I think, like you said, a lot of people have their preferred television network. It's true, right? In Russia, they don't have as many different news channels and sources as we do in the United States. But here we have a ton of them, and everyone has their preferred news source, and each news source has its own story. They have their own agenda. Mm-hmm. And so I think most people do believe everything they see on the news, but what they see on the news can be very different depending on the channel they're watching. And as a result, Americans are always at each other's necks, right? They're always fighting each other because one person watches CNN, the other person watches Fox News, and they're like, yeah, you're wrong.
And then they're like, I watched the exact same thing. I saw it with my eyes. And what it is just a different snippet of a particular video. And however you snip the video, that's the story you get out of it. And yeah, it's really sad to see, honestly, though, too.
Okay,
that was a really good question.
That was a good one. Okay.
Way to dive right in.
The next Russian stereotype we have from another one of my viewers is, I'm just going to read the whole thing.
Go for it.
Hello.
Hello. Hey, how's it going?
Hey. So this guy says, everybody has a Hollywood smile, white teeth, big houses. Everyone has their own room in said house. And everyone's been to Disneyland. And 90% of these people are also fat.
All right, well.
That was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. And there's, again, a lot of truth to it, especially compared to the rest of the world. We're so big on entertainment here. We are, I would say, like the entertainment capital of the world. Like, entertainment is such a huge industry, but also given that our culture really values appearance as well. I personally am one that not until recently did I start valuing my appearance like that, but I also see it affects how people perceive you and how people like take you. It almost comes with like pretty people have like a level of trust associated to them automatically, right? And stuff like that. So that was the first part.
But that's about the smile, right?
That's the smile part.
I don't know about you, but I always grew up and I was always told that when you're talking to somebody, you look them in the eye, and like when you're meeting somebody or like when you're out in public, like just like have a good appearance and look like have a smile on, because it affects the way people perceive you. No one wants to interact with somebody who looks dark and gloomy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I know from learning Russian that a lot of Russians perceive a smile as negative. It has a negative connotation.
Really?
Yeah. So I always hear that when you smile in Russian, when you smile in Russia, people perceive that as there's something wrong with you. There's no reason for you to be smiling at me unless there's something wrong with you, like mentally, like a crazy person smile, or you mean me harm.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. No, yeah. Again, here it's all smiles all the time. Like if you're not smiling, people like sometimes,
what's wrong with you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you? They'll like sometimes even avoid you, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that person's like too negative or stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
the next part, big houses. I would say a lot of people grow up
Yeah.
in suburbs. So like there's a lot of like 1-2 story houses.
And well, the thing is, that's also become even more true in modern day, right? Back when like my parents grew up and stuff like that, houses 1,000 square foot or below, everyone did still more or less have their own room if they didn't have too many kids. If they had multiple kids, they would share rooms. But as time has progressed, right, houses have doubled and sometimes even tripled in size, right? To be these massive like 2,500 square foot houses is really standard at this point. I have friends that, again, 3 or 4 kids in the house, every single one of them has their own room, along with the parents having their own room and stuff like that. So houses are massive.
But everyone always has their own room. When I was a kid, I shared a room with my brother, but that was because he was like a baby and we were also poor.
Yeah.
But most people, I feel like, have their own room.
Yeah.
And I also think most people have been to Disneyland. I don't think I've met many people that haven't been to Disneyland. I haven't been to Disneyland, but I know a lot of people have. They have the money. It's like if you've been to Disneyland, it means you're middle class and up.
Okay, so no. I've heard this said. There's a different way to tell the socioeconomic status of somebody based on how often they go to Disneyland. If they've been once in their entire childhood, they're lower to middle class. If they've never been, they grew up poor. Sorry.
Okay, that's fair. So the next one, also multiple stereotypes in one post. All Americans are armed, love baseball, know very little about any other sport besides baseball, and are always, even in their sleep, smiling. And they never tell people what they actually think about them. So let's break that down, starting from the top.
From the top.
Armed. I think in the South, especially, a lot of people are armed. You're armed. You literally have a...
I have a gun in my room. So so absolutely, people are armed. Second Amendment.
Yeah. Especially in the South, where we live. Baseball, it's popular, but it's not that popular. I feel like football, American football is even bigger.
Football replaced baseball as America's sport. Baseball used to be very big. Everybody followed it. Everybody loved baseball. Yeah. But nowadays, football and basketball is getting there.
Basketball too?
Yeah, basketball's on the up.
About smiling, same thing, I think. Even
in our sleep. That one's funny. I had to laugh at that. That was funny, but...
and we never say what we think about someone to their face. And I think that's kind of true. And depends on the context.
Depends on where you are. New York, I feel like they'll give it to you straight. But in the South, like if you're dumb, like people will be like, oh, bless your heart. and they'll say things again with a smile on their face in just the nicest way possible that just you can sometimes get that second meeting and stuff like that.
There is that like stereotype even here in America that if you go to like Chicago, LA, New York, and they're like, screw you. Like, but then in the South, everyone's supposed to be polite.
It's all again about appearing nice and stuff.
So the next stereotype that we were sent is that like the homeless don't want to build a life for themselves because they live off of benefits and have no reason to get off of them. They like it.
That one's a very politically divisive one.
That's very political even today. That's a very big issue. And I think it depends on the state. It depends on the state and the political leaning of the state, because each state handles this differently. And it's a big problem in big blue states and big cities, much less so in red states and in the country.
Well, and that's because of just the level of support that they do get, that sometimes it's not necessarily that they don't want to, it's why, right? Because again, like when you're in life, actually, I would say just as Americans in general, there are so many like times where quote unquote like luxuries that maybe like past generations and stuff didn't have come in, and your life becomes so comfortable that you don't end up striving for more, right? There's no necessity to drive you out of those situations.
Yeah, it's too much support. It's a crutch. If you have that much free support, you lose the drive to want to do more. That's all it really is. Okay, so this one is probably more geared towards you.
Oh God.
White Americans are afraid of black people.
Again,
This is very political. It's
It's
actually very uncomfortable to ask people that here as well.
Yeah, it does. It puts you in an uncomfortable spot because, again, just like you don't say, like, we don't say our true feelings all the time, right? Because you don't want to appear a certain way. The truth of the matter is it all depends on upbringing. Me, myself, am I scared of black people? No. Am I scared of going certain places that I know I would not be welcome in that environment? Yes.
It goes the other way around too. A lot of African Americans are really afraid of being in white spaces because they feel that they don't belong.
Yeah, and again, I think that's an unfortunate divide that America has fostered in the past 200 years, and hopefully it's something that, you know, gets resolved or makes more progress. Again, the past 5 years have sown a lot of discourse in that area. 5-10 years have sown a lot of discourse in that area and hurt a lot of those, like, relations that were, I feel like, starting to get better before that. You know?
Yeah. So the next stereotype we have, it's scary after the last question. Americans are very arrogant about the people of other countries, and they believe that their country and their culture is superior to others.
It's one of those things where I feel like a lot of countries have that feeling, right? You have a lot of pride in your country, you have a lot of pride in your people, right? So you want to think that you're number one. You want to think you're number one in your day-to-day life, right? That's one thing that helps get you out of bed in the morning. It's one thing that helps you drive to do more, and so on and so forth. So I think that's a trait that was built up in America, especially in, like, the early 1900s, the 50s, to really, like, you know, embolden people to do more and do great things. Yes, I think it's a stereotype. I think people who are kind of locked into the US that don't really travel elsewhere and all that sort of stuff, they harbor that sentiment more. However, those that get out, that get to see the rest of the world, they truly do go and they appreciate other people's cultures, and they appreciate the cultures for what they are, and they do. I like to think that a lot of them do it in a way where they're not like, oh, I'm better than all these people, but at the same time, I know some of them are unfortunate.
I also think it has to do with exposure, like having grown up here in the United States, but also coming from immigrant background, right? Indian background. I've noticed that a lot of people just aren't exposed to other cultures. America is the world's most dominant popular culture. Everyone around the world watches American movies and listens to American music across the world. And so when we do go outside the country, we see a lot of the reflections of our own society there.
Yeah.
And so when all you see is America, you don't think any other way. You think, oh, this is right. What we do is right, and what they do is wrong. And so we are better. And I think that only changes when you travel and you let go of your own culture. And that's something I'm saying as an American, right? When you go to Europe, when you go to Africa, Asia, you have to meet the local people, listen to the local music,
100%.
Kind of forget about American culture. But a lot of Americans don't do that. We go to, like Americans will travel to Thailand and then turn on American music, watch American movies, speak to everyone in English, and then come back like, yeah, those guys, weird.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And I think you really hit on it.
Next stereotype. For Americans, career comes first and family second. I think that's true for a lot of people, because in the United States, it's not common for people to live at home, stay with their parents after 18. I know in a lot of other cultures, in India, in Russia, it's completely normal. People will finish high school and then just live with their parents and like work jobs until they're in their 30s. But here, after you turn 18, you have to leave the house and you have to get started on your career. Whether that means you go to school or you get a job, and that's all that you focus on. People say in your 20s, you work, and then you worry about family later.
I agree more, or couldn't agree more. A lot of these things depend on where you are. Big cities, that's where you'll see it the most as well. Whereas if you go to more like rural areas and whatnot, there's more of a shift towards a family focus, right?
Последний стереотип у нас, который мы обсудим в этом видео. Конечно, если вы хотите увидеть больше такого контента, тогда, конечно, подписывайтесь на канал, напишите в комментариях, что вам понравилась эта тема, и мы, конечно, будем делать больше подобных видео в будущем. Итак, последний стереотип у нас. Alright, the last stereotype that we have. Americans have no interest in politics, nor in the business of other countries. And I think that's crazy, because that's all that people talk about these days. Yeah. And not just about our politics. We just want to know what's happening everywhere. Everyone has an opinion about everything happening everywhere. Because even in school, we learn that we are the world police.
Yeah. Every other country, like people that I talk to, some of my friends from other countries, they see American news on the TV, like, oh, our political or like presidential elections, all that sort of stuff. They see so much about America. However, we only really see stuff when it's very bad in other countries. We don't actually know about elections from other countries. We don't know about like the day-to-day like big news stories or anything like that in a lot of these different places. So I don't think that's actually that far off. Yeah, we want to get our we want to know what's going on in all these other places, but it's something that I feel like most people won't look up and they will just hear the little snippets they see on the news. So actually, yeah.
I think that's true. That is true. Americans only, this goes back to the first stereotype, right? Americans only know what the TV shows them. They don't care about anything else. So,
yeah, a lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Итак, ребята, это было все. Я надеюсь, что вам понравилось это видео. Я думаю, что это была очень горячая тема. Некоторые стереотипы, которые вы нам прислали, были очень-очень горячие, то есть очень политические. И эти же стереотипы творят очень много проблем здесь, в Америке, потому что люди постоянно борются за права разных групп, и люди часто обсуждают и осуждают друг друга по поводу этих убеждений, но все равно я думаю, что это видео было очень продуктивно, и я надеюсь, что вы хоть что-то новое узнали про американцев. Но, конечно, как всегда, если вы хотите, чтобы мы делали больше таких видео, то поставьте лайк, подписывайтесь на канал и напишите ваши впечатления в комментариях под этим видео. И также вы можете найти нас в социальных сетях, в основном в Инстаграме, ВКонтакте, на Ютубе и так далее. И все ссылки на наши страницы в разных социальных сетях будут в описании под этим видео. Обязательно подписывайтесь на страницу Трипа в Инстаграме и так далее. И также, если вы хотите, чтобы он продолжал сниматься у меня на канале, то поставьте этот же лайк. Как всегда, всем спасибо за просмотр, и мы увидимся в следующем ролике. Всем пока.